Hi, I'm Jack, and in this video, I want to tell you the most common mistakes that I've learned either from my own travels or from people I know and how you can avoid them. Let's get right into it. One mistake I made was arriving in Italy without choosing any housing or not looking into housing before I got there. I kind of just assumed that it would be easy to find some housing once I got there, say in a hostel or something, but once I arrived, all the hostels were actually booked, and it was very difficult to find any housing. It also could happen if you wait too long to book some housing. I found that in a lot of places, if I'm looking really late or if something got in the way, such as in the past when I was going to Korea, our Airbnb was canceled and we had to look for somewhere really late. And when it was really late, there wasn't a lot of options and it made it very difficult. That's why one of the things I recommend is that you book housing as far in advance as possible and make sure to check not only so you have more options, but it'll also be cheaper. Everything will be a lot easier if you do it that way. However, when it comes to housing being cheap, I would also be careful about booking the cheapest thing that you find. Sometimes the really cheapest option might be kind of bad. An example happened for me in Korea. Again, as I was mentioning with the Airbnb when it was canceled, I started booking in booking.com very late, say the last day or two before, because a friend had said I could stay with him, but then some different things changed where he was moving and it got too difficult. So I booked the cheapest hotel I found on booking.com, which ended up being horrible. It was a really bad experience. The room smelled like cleaning supplies mixed with cigarettes and other musty smells. It wasn't a good experience. The walls were dirty, everything was uncomfortable. We ended up just leaving the hotel. We just gave up the money. They said they couldn't refund it, but luckily it was only like $60. So I just left it and I'm like, no, I'm not staying in here. This was a horrible experience. So that's why if I had not chosen the cheapest, just went like a little higher, maybe up to like $80, $100, which I ended up doing in the end anyways. It was a much nicer experience. The hotel was much cleaner. So it could also be a little dangerous if a price seems just a bit too good to be true. It probably is. And the only exception I'd say for that is hostels, where I've stayed in $12, $15 hostels that end up being really nice. I feel like that's kind of, you just have to look in the reviews and see what people are saying about it. But when it comes to hotels, the absolute cheapest option normally ends up not being that good in my experience. So I would also just be careful around where you choose for. If it's really the cheapest option, is it worth staying there? Another thing that I had really not thought about in previous trips was whether or not it was going to be a holiday in that country. Every country has different dates for when their holidays are, and that could really often disrupt what's going on in the country. Whether amusement parks being overcrowded or closed, or restaurants being closed. There was a restaurant I really wanted to try the flan in Japan. However, because the time I went actually had two holidays that coincided, and some of them spent even the entire week closed for that reason, I ended up missing out on that, and also didn't get to go to Disney just because there were so many people who were off from school and work. So something I would check before booking your trip is check if it's going to be a holiday in that country, because you might not know of it before and it could really disrupt what's going on. So it's a great thing to check before booking any travel destination. Technology-wise, another common mistake that I see people often make is not getting a local or eSIM when they travel to a country. If you're going to be in any country for more than a few days, I definitely recommend getting a local or eSIM from one of the apps I've mentioned previously, such as Airlo or Scratch. There's a few of them that you can get eSIMs on. It's going to be a lot cheaper than the prices that the regular carriers charge you. AT&T charges you around $10 a day or something like that, up to a maximum of something, but an eSIM only ends up costing like $5 to $7 for the week, so it's definitely, you're going to save a lot of money paying that all week versus paying $10 a day. A lot of people just don't know that this is an option, and you may be limited in some scenarios where if your phone is locked to a carrier because you owe money on it, or other reasons, if it's a work phone or something, you may not have this option, but it's definitely worth checking out and see if your phone has the option to get another SIM or an eSIM or a local SIM, whatever options you have to save the money there, and it just makes using stuff in that country a lot easier. In a similar vein, another common mistake is not checking if your cards have any foreign transaction fees or if you have a card that could be used in foreign ATMs. Because if your card does have foreign transaction fees, generally it's like 3% on whatever you're buying. So that'll add up really quick with every food you're buying and excursions, anything you're doing. If you could avoid that fee, it's going to be really helpful in the long run because there's really no reason to pay for that. There's so many cards that offer you no foreign transaction fees, and to just save 3% on every single thing you buy, and even on travel cards you're getting maybe 2 to 5% back on some of those things, it's just definitely not worth paying that extra money for no reason. You're just helping the bank, and better to keep that money in your pockets. Another common mistake that I've made and still frequently make is not knowing what to do in the area. For myself, I generally like just exploring the area and trying to figure out what to do, see how the locals live, but if I don't have any idea of what's going on in the area, it can end up getting really quite boring. That's why I would definitely see if you could check out or ask someone what are the best things to do in this area. Because if you have no idea at all and you're just walking around, you might miss out on some really fun or good things, such as good food or a cool park to check out. But whatever it might be, just getting the basic rundown of what there is to do in that city or location is a great idea, because arriving there with no idea can work if you just want to relax or are going to a resort or something of that like, but in general, it is best to know at least a few options of things you could do if you do get bored. The last common mistake I see is either bringing too many clothes or bringing the wrong clothes. When you go to a country, you might not know the weather or what it's going to be like based on what you've heard in the past. Say you're going to a country that's going to be very warm, say Argentina, but then you end up going in the winter because you didn't realize that the winter is actually in what is the summer in the northern hemisphere, so you might pack the wrong clothes or just bring too many clothes based on what the weather's going to be. So always check out a reliable weather source online or on any apps to see what the weather's going to be like during the time of your trip. Of course, this is something you have to check out a bit closer to when your trip is actually going to happen, since they can't predict it too far in the future. But just having a general sense of what the weather's going to be like and what the season's going to be like, looking at the averages for that month of the year is helpful just to not overpack or bring the wrong clothes. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you like tips like this or want to learn more about travel, I have a link to my WhatsApp group that's free in the description, and if you want to learn more, you could always subscribe as well to get notified about the next videos. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.